All right, let's get it started, man. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We're back for another episode. Not consistency, but we are remaining consistent. So we are going to be going over a couple of things, kind of a continuation from our last conversation about finances. Um, right now, we do have a couple of clips from an interview that Kevin Hart and Vince Staples had together. Um, and we're just going to be kind of discussing a couple of different timestamps from there, and just seeing how the conversation flows. So it's not our typical format. I got a new computer, so we had to spend a little bit of time setting up. So thank you for bearing with us. How you doing this week, Frank?
Doing great. And the last time we got together, we asked folks to record their first money lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, people got a chance to go back and really give some thought to it. Following up on that question, today I want to get us thinking about what is money. Now, money is something that we talk about all the time, but then what is it?
Mm.
What would you say it is?
To me, money is energy. Um, it is a way to represent value. Um, so it doesn't have to just be the paper currency that we've grown to know and use on a daily basis, but money's almost in the eyes of the beholder. You know, you can use anything as a currency. And when I say currency, that's when I think of energy, which relates back to why I think money is energy, or the manifestation of energy, and it can represent different the amount of work that you put in for something. So that would be my basic definition of money. Hold on, let me cuz I'm staring at you on one side. I'm trying to I'm you're on this monitor, but I want to make sure that we're seeing each other without me looking on the wrong, or it looked like I'm not paying attention. Okay, let me bring this here. Okay.
Why you doing that?
Mm. Yeah, we're good.
I think you're the first person that I could think of that gave an initial definition for money as energy. That's very different. And that would be my primary definition for money also.
Okay. I'm all set up now, so we're good to go whenever you are. So, did you want to start off with the what do you want to talk about the clip first, or do you want to just show a couple of clips from the Kevin Hart and Vince Staples interview? How did you want to kind of go about it?
Yeah, so, and for some reason, I'm not sure who's causing this echo. I'm echoing crazy.
You're hearing an echo? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. Mm, let me think. Maybe I need to wear some headphones. You're probably hearing yourself repeat back from here. So let me just do that and have my head put my headphones on. It did tell me to try and use some. Where is Don't worry, we'll be able to cut all of this out too. Well, let me use some basic headphones. I don't need the Beats. Maybe that'll help.
All right. Okay, that did the trick.
That did okay. I
Yeah, yeah.
Let me just turn the volume up. Okay, we should be good then.
Okay, cool. So I want to piggyback off of your definition for money. You said money is energy, and we're still looking at how to support people as we move into the last quarter of the year. Here in the South, most of the young people have gone back to school. Now I know up north in places like Boston and New York City, the school age young people, they haven't gone back yet, but that's coming. And as we were saying in our last conversation, from back to school forward is a heavy spending time for a lot of families
Right.
because you got back to school, and nowadays people turn up for Halloween.
Mm. Yeah.
We have parties and all kinds of stuff and get into ornate costumes and everything. So that's for a lot of people that's become a real holiday. Now, Thanksgiving is a little different because it's not that people are necessarily spending a lot of money on Thanksgiving per se,
Mm-hmm.
but we talked about this in the last conversation. The day after Thanksgiving,
Black Friday.
right? And
Mm.
so people people burn through some paper during that time, and then of course when Christmas comes, a lot of folks will break the bank. So I think that this conversation is one that we'll have at least for a few sessions. Hopefully, we can help people to better prepare for the holidays that are yet to come. Possibly, we may have also with the last episode help folks who are still yet to get into the whole back to school mode. Now, around the country, college age students have already gone back. Some of them are on their way back. So when we think about this concept of energy,
Mm-hmm.
for some people, part of what needs to happen in order for them to be in the money position that they desire to be in is not just only prepare themselves to get money. For some people, and we, in certain ways, we dealt with this conversation a month or two ago when we were talking about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes in order to get into the money flow, we've got to release some baggage. There are people who that energy that should be expended towards flourishing, towards being creative, developing their business, they're taking that energy and trapping it with thoughts of revenge, with thoughts of clapping back. And I can assure you that some of the people who are either watching or will watch later, that is the thing that some folks need to address. The holdup is the displaced energy that you're placing into getting revenge. And your desire to get revenge, first of all, what happens? So you go and you bust out all of her tires, all of her car windows, or you key the car up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you feel some level of gratification. I'm saying the word you. I'm not talking about
No,
you. I'm
I get
talking
it. I get what you're
this
saying.
person.
Mm.
Talking about this person that's struggling with wanting to get revenge. But again, so often that same misplaced energy is now going to take away from what you're really after, because again, maybe the reason why that person wants to get revenge in the first place has to do with money. Money that was promised. Maybe it was child support. Maybe it's money that that person felt that they deserved because the other person somehow disrespected them, cheated. But then once this person that was the victim of the revenge gets law enforcement involved, now the money that you should have been getting, you're not going to get that because now you're getting ready to have to pay a lawyer, maybe bail. And you see, it can be a very nasty cycle in the wrong direction.
Mm.
So I wanted to I wanted to drop that in there because I think that that's a point, especially since we're looking at money as energy. That's a very important point that some people need to pay attention to.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. That's one thing when it comes to making the wrong decision or putting your energy in the wrong places that you're gonna lose it. So always think before you act. And anybody who's in a situation where they think revenge is supposed to help them, guarantee is going to come back to you and drain you of your energy, whether it's your physical energy or your energy that's manifested itself as money. It's going to come back and be taken away from you at some point. So,
And I wonder how many people doing a bid right now are doing it because of exactly what we're talking about. Hopefully, we may be saving somebody from doing one because how many of the people who are locked up right now for assault or worse because of this need to get revenge? Now, I'm not saying that there are times when you need to respond when you've done wrong, when you feel like you've been done wrong. What I'm saying is that even in that context, there's a way to respond that will be better for everybody. Because I was watching I was watching this documentary the other day, and I don't remember the name of it right now. I don't. You may have seen it. I think it's on Netflix,
mhm.
and it's about these men who ended up in prison, and this organization had this program where those men would get an opportunity to attend a dance with their daughter.
Okay.
And what was so amazing about that program is that 95% of the men who participated in that program, when they got out, they didn't go back. But what that program brought out was the collateral damage that exists once somebody allows their emotions to get the better of them, and how that will affect their paper in the long run, because now the funds that he would have liked to have had to support his daughter, he's not in the position to get those funds. And then the funds that are necessary to support the household, those funds are gone. And then the funds that may have been coming in to create legacy wealth, that has now come to a halt.
Mm.
And that's just a simple example. I mean, we can there's so many there's so many examples that we can use. Um,
No.
and I think this conversation kind of runs us into this clip. I think this is the clip where Kevin talks about what happened after his mom left us.
Hmm.
I think it's a good example of something that you said, the importance of making sound decisions around what's next. And then also when we find ourselves dealing with tremendous loss, like in the case that Kevin's going to talk about in the loss of his mother, that's an important time for us to tap into a support system, because oftentimes when we experience great loss, that's that is a time where we can find ourselves, especially when we talking about money, not making the most sound decisions.
Mm.
Somebody loses, somebody breaks up in a relationship, and so to assuage that discomfort, they go on a shopping binge.
Yeah, a lot of retail therapy.
Right, right.
There's actually a lot that I do want to say to what you were just saying, but let's play this clip and we'll continue the conversation from there. But yeah, there was a lot of things, especially about the delay of funds that comes when you make a bad decision. But we'll get back to that. So
All right, cool,
hold on,
cool.
let me okay, hold on. So let me know if you can hear it.
No, not yet.
You can't hear it?
No.
Okay, let me make a check something real quick.
That's one thing. Whenever we see Kevin Hart, he always seems to be having a good time.
Not always. Okay, let's see. Meet the scene.
I think while you're doing that, I think that's a key part of his success. Although he's labeled as a comedian, sometimes when we see comedians who are on stage or in front of the camera specifically to tell jokes, they don't necessarily seem like they're having a good time. But he Kevin, he always seems like he's having a good time. I think that's part of what makes what endears him to his fan base.
All right. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Let me know if you can hear this. Still no?
No, no, can't hear it.
Let me I'll remove my headphones for a second and I'm gonna see if that helps. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
we're good. We're good.
And then where the video just picked up, he was talking about the fact that in a matter of weeks, the money was gone. Now, of course, Kevin's a comedian. It's hard to believe that as a young man, as he said, had pissed off the whole 100K in a few weeks. But then again, not necessarily. One of the great compliments that he made about his mother was to say that his mother was not check to check. And so a lot of people get stuck because they believe that it's all about how much they make. It's not, yeah, what you make is significant, but what's more important is how much you keep. In another setting, I was sharing how a black woman who was a launderer at a private white institution, I don't remember which one at the moment, she didn't have any children. And if I remember the story correctly, she wasn't married. This was at the turn of, she worked at this school at the turn of the 20th century. But when she died, she left the university what she had saved. And if I'm not mistaken, she left the university like 200K.
Mm.
And now the question is, what provisions are we making to leave our impact, our legacy on the next generation? To the credit of Kevin's mother, we can say she did her part. In part, she did her part in leaving something. Now, what we don't know is whether or not she did her part to put him in a position where he was financially educated
Right.
so that once he got the funds, he would keep it.
That's a big part of that right there because, and that's kind of where the idea of a trust and a will comes into place because, and I think that's real important because you want to have an actual will of what you want that money to go towards. So that's when you are thinking about, you know, the end days for yourself, you know, think about how you want your legacy to be carried on. So leave your next of kin with some instructions on how to further grow that money, what your wishes for that money will be moving forward, for sure.
Now, here's something I want to talk to you about, and I didn't really take the time to drill down on this with my sister, who I was talking to earlier today. She was saying that she knew of a particular family. I think the gentleman she was referring to was a retired military man, and not only did he have his grandchildren on an allowance, but he also had his grown children on an allowance.
Mm.
This man not only served in the military, but he also got involved in corporate America, and he did quite well. My question for you, and I thought about this quite a bit of late. So often when we talk about legacy, folks are thinking about what somebody is going to leave once they're gone. But in this particular case, the man is sharing his wealth while he's still here. What are your thoughts on that? Because I often think about the fact that should it be that the person who has been fortunate to amass a good sum of resources, should it be that they experience what that gift looks like in the hands of their loved ones while they're still here? Or, I mean, and is this approach something that is unique to our Western experience? Is it how people do it in other parts of the world? And and obviously we're just having a conversation. I'm not asking you these questions like you're supposed to know all the answers, but I
Right.
just want to get your thoughts. Yeah.
I guess living and being able to kind of pass on what you have currently. I think that's everyone's primary goal, I would think. Like I think if people had the funds, they would want to share that with their children, with their family. To some extent, it also depends on how much of those funds are kind of freed up, I would say. So I think if you're debt free and you have it like that, because to me the goal should be to eliminate all debts. Like, you don't want to pass on and leave your debts behind. You want to leave some type of assets behind for your family. So that was my mentality getting life insurance. I got life insurance at a decent age, and for me, I'm like, okay, as long as I don't accrue an astronomical amount of debt, then I should leave a little something for my next of kin, or if I don't have kids by a certain point, then to the family who's with them, who's still in my life. I think that's the part that, when you think about your what your impact is, you don't want to leave the earth a burden, I would say. I think if you could take all, because you don't, and that's another thing about not letting that energy go to waste, because you can't take that energy with you to the next to heaven, to the next plane, whatever. So you want that to be used to bless the people who are still remaining here. And if you had a positive impact on people, then they should want to carry out your will and use that last bit of energy and information to make the world kind of a better place on your behalf. Because I do
So,
remember, real quick, I do remember the first time I had any type of, when my grandfather on my mother's side passed away. He had left me he had left me some money, not a substantial amount, but I was very young, so I didn't need a very large amount of money. So my parents, they just saved it for me, and that was kind of some of the money that I used to help purchase my first car. I found out later that he had left my mother some properties and things like that I don't think they were in the best condition to really be resold, but that concept, and you know him being able to contribute to my first car without him even being on earth was enough for me to kind of understand the beauty of legacy and inheritance and things like that. So I think you don't want anyone starting from zero, even if it's not a substantial amount. Like, Kevin Hart said he got 100,000. Him and his brother got 100,000. It was nowhere close to that, but you know what I mean. Just the idea that you're not starting from complete zero, especially after losing someone who's important to you. I think that's always important.
I think this is a point that we need to continue to talk about, because on the one hand, I think that you have those people who will say, well, you can't take it with you, and of course, everyone has the right to do with the funds that they earn what they want to do with the funds that they earn. I think that my challenge, and what I know as a financial coach, is that sometimes what we see people spending money on is actually not money they've earned, it's money that they've borrowed. And so, take for an example, I've been talking about the school age youngsters, and this past spring, a lot of high schoolers went to the prom. And I don't know if you saw on social media, some people were showing up at the prom in Rolls Royces and wearing dresses that cost 25K. Now, if the person who is spending that type of paper on their daughter or son has those kind of means, then so be it. The challenge comes in when people are check to check, like Kevin was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and overexerting themselves trying to perpetrate, as we would say back in the day, or as I said further back in the day, trying to keep up with the Joneses,
Mm-hmm.
front. So, but at the same time, if a person is a multimillionaire and someone that they love is really dragging through the mud, then the question is it more beneficial for them to see their loved one's wealth after that person is gone, or do they take that wealth and help them get out of the mud? And so I wonder if I wonder if there's a proper balance. For an example, and I'm glad you shared what you shared about your grandfather, although he was gone when it happened. But in other communities where there's trust funds that's flowing, there's nothing like I remember having conversations with people who I graduated with, and it's one thing to, and that's why this whole conversation around chopping down student loan indebtedness, because black folks are disproportionately harmed by the whole student loan thing, because in some of those communities where that had the head start, as Dr. King would say, when Mitch graduates from college, he dips into the trust fund and buys a house right straight out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And he may have had securities that paid for his college education right off, or unfortunately, some of those same folks were scamming and and claiming that they needed support when they really didn't need it, or getting scholarships that they didn't really deserve, or Brett Favre. We'll call it Brett Favre.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. I'm
Yeah.
sure he's got himself in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think well I think a big problem like with you saying the decision to help somebody now or helping them later, I think we overlook the how much it costs to look out later when it's not really that much money. Like if you think about how much you typically spend on something like life insurance isn't that substantial. There's different life insurance plans, of course, but you know, when you think about what you pay for miscellaneous things, or even just the going out to dinner a couple of times now in Atlanta, you you can have a whole life insurance payment per month. So I think kind of getting into the idea of delayed gratification, I think that has to come, and that's something that as a person, when you're paying for life insurance, it's money that you probably won't even ever get to see again. So it does take a lot of discipline to, continue to feed something towards the future. But with that type of focus and dedication, I think you're just more conscious overall of your finances and kind of understand that, what I buy now, like, yeah, we can have a nice dinner, but that's only gonna last me 24 hours. Now, if you take that money and put it into, life insurance or invest it, then feeding, that's possibly can feed my great grandchildren. So it's a mentality thing that I think we need to kind of change, especially within our community. Setting up a trust, like I don't know all of the legal, like, but that's something that I have looked into. Setting up a trust in the future. I mean, I don't, not balling like that yet to where I gotta have money to. But honestly, that's the thing. It's not even about how much money you have, but it's about setting up those entities so that your next of kin will understand how to use the money. Because I think, really, even if you just pass down a plan, that's better than passing down nothing or passing down debt. So if you just had somewhat of a forethought to save for your grandchildren, save for your great great grandchildren, then you're a step ahead of a lot of people. And the more forward thinking you are, then I think that actually leads to better decisions in the present. So you're not, you're thinking, well, do I really need to buy a motorcycle right now? Or, could I put that extra money towards, making sure that the next generation has a little bit more foundation to stand on? Because if we look at the position that black people are in from not having that foundation early on, like we lost so much of our heritage due to slavery. Like we basically started from America. Like we're almost a new species, if you want to think of it that way. So we don't even know what we were called prior to being referred to as black people. We're only black people in comparison to white people. So we don't even know our original names in a lot of situations. So passing down people will listen a little bit, or they'll at least listen to if you put a little story, or have your tell kind of your life story along with the will. They'll listen if they know they're getting some money with it. And I think that it might stick with them a little bit better. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, is like, it's more than just passing down the money. We're passing down a narrative as well, that in the direction in which we want to see the world go. So, and I think that's why we're so far behind in that narrative story, is because we haven't had the funds to help kind of craft and pass down this information. Now, we found unique ways to pass it down, like with music and different arts, but the monetary way of passing down legacy is probably the most effective that we have.
You know, you said quite a few really pivotal things. And sometimes we don't realize, because folks don't keep a budget or a spending plan, which I talked about in the last episode. Some people really don't have a clue what they're spending on. Just we're just going to deal with the eating out thing,
Mm-hmm.
because for some people they go to Starbucks for breakfast, then they go to some place like Panera Bread for lunch, and part of me hates to be mentioning brands, but I'm just
Nah,
go out someplace for go out to some particular place for lunch, and then work has wiped you out. You don't feel like cooking when you get home, so you go and grab something to take back to the house. So in one day, and I'm telling you, this isn't stuff that I'm imagining. I'm telling you stuff for real cases of real clients that I've had. It's very easy for a person to spend a Benjamin in a day, just just wandering around at eateries. You do that. You do that 2 or 3 times in a week. That's already 3 Benjamins.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even gotten to the club on the weekend. So you see somebody, and my sister was sharing with me a wonderful joke involving Kevin Hart. And I think that I think the joke went something like Kevin Hart was hanging out with Trey Songz, and I might have this off. And Trey Songz had X amount of bottles on the table, so Kevin was trying to keep up with Trey, and he buys X amount of bottles.
Mm.
And so he says to Trey, "Hey man, how much you spent on all them bottles?" Trey said, "Man, I didn't spend nothing on those bottles. Those bottles came, because I came here."
Mm.
Kevin. Now, of course, we have to remember that Kevin is a comedian, so maybe he was just messing with us. But that's how that works. And so a lot of people, they go to the club, they see all these bottles on the celebrity's table, and they think that the celebrity, with all the beautiful people around them, paid for those bottles. No, those bottles were given to those celebrities so you can pay for those bottles.
Exactly. That's how marketing works, and
Yeah.
that's how social media works. That's how marketing works. So they're always going at, but that's where celebrity comes into play for so many things. And that's why brands get celebrities to promote it, because they want you to be like, oh, you want to be like this person? Well, you got to buy this many bottles. So that's a big problem in Atlanta, just in terms of people competing. This is the reason why I don't typically go out anymore, because it's really such a competition in terms of just clothing. You have to have it starts with the clothing, so now you have to have the newest clothes. Because I used to love sneakers. I used to but I'm not even ashamed to say it, I used to get fake sneakers from websites, like some of the really, I mean, they weren't anything like, I wouldn't get any Jordans or anything, but just if it was a sneaker that I liked the style of, I wasn't against getting getting some fake sneakers, because I'm like, yeah, why would I spend $200 on that shoe when it's right here for 75, whatever the price was. And I mean, this was more in like middle school, early high school, whatever. But back when I did care kind of about, I would be on the sneaker websites and I'm being like, they had the first Kanye's first Yeezy shoe. Those were going for like $1,000, and it's like, how can I get this? And like, I want these so bad, but I can't afford them as a young kid. So it's one of those things where you have to beat the mind game that's once you're able to defeat the idea of that's gonna make you the person who you want to be, then you can start to just be the person who you are. And I really got so far away from brands. When I see like, what a lot of other people spend money on, and not even just on social media, just in real life, when I see people buy designer, I've gone into some of those stores and I'm like, where I can afford maybe one piece. And that's the thing, because it's like, oh, if you buy this, you can't rock you can't rock a designer shirt with some Walmart jeans or something like that. So then that forces you into getting all of the different pieces. And so once you realize that, then it's like, I can't even compete in this game, because you go to Saks Fifth, or one of the go down, and in Miami go to Brickell or something and try and shop in those places, and it's like, yo, you're gonna spend two mortgage payments just trying to get one outfit. And so it's real crazy how we've allowed society to kind of get to that point to where, and also once you have Instagram and you're taking pictures of it, it's like, okay, how many times can you really wear it now? So you might you have to have one special event that you want to wear this 2 mortgage payment outfit for, and now you really can't wear it again, and people are like, oh, you always wearing that that same designer, so. And they started having things where people can trade in stuff, or people thrift. So there's different ways to kind of but after a while you just realize like, it's really not worth it. Like, if you just have the basics I try and stay far away from brands myself personally, but you know, and I do buy certain things for quality. Like I'll spend a little bit extra if it's a decent brand, or if I know that it will be acceptable in certain environments. I'm not saying, don't buy anything quality, but you only need maybe maybe two quality. You would probably need like three high quality pieces and just mix and match that with some pretty decent quality stuff, and you'll be okay.
What's interesting about what you're saying, I heard that that's what President Obama would do. I heard that he didn't have, of course, he had the means. The reality is that a lot of people don't know this. Of all the President Obama was actually the most well off. But that's a whole other conversation. But one of the things that, as you were talking, I thought about something that Mike Epps said recently. And I guess I'm still on this whole idea of how do we, piggybacking off of what Kevin Hart was saying in terms of the insurance money that was left to him, how, what should be our pursuit of the bag? And how should we understand our, our management of our energy in that pursuit? So Mike Epps was saying that it really shifted everything for him when it occurred to him that all these things that he had been chasing, he couldn't take it with him. And so there was a statement that he made. I think he said that we all are renting away our lives. He said something to that extent. And it really got me to thinking because sometimes when I'm in certain neighborhoods, you see these huge palatial homes, and you never see anybody come in and out of them.
Mm.
So the question becomes, what what was the point? Because if this person is never there to enjoy it because they're having to work their butt off in order to pay for said house or the upkeep of said house, then at the end of the day, how much sense did that really make to, I mean, that's just one thing. But I do want to put this out there, and then we can move off this point. One of my mentors says that one of the biggest mistakes that he has made was to take his wealth and give big extravagant gifts to family members,
Mm.
like houses and cars, because it was his experience to a man that everybody that he did that with, it totally devastated his relationship with them, and it changed them mostly because they hadn't gone through the process to earn that money.
Right.
And so now you just handed them a house or a Lexus, and now in his case, once he did that, there was this expectation that, well, if you gave me a Lexus, if I happen to wreck this Lexus, shouldn't you shouldn't you get me another car? Because you can afford it.
Mm.
So anyway,
That
it's a very tricky thing, this whole idea of whether now or later, you know, do you leave it now to the point I think you were in part to the point I think you were making through insurance policies and so forth. In many ways, it's easier to do it after because there's less penalty. A lot of times when you do it after, depending upon the financial instruments and how a person stacks their resources. But anyway, um, that's almost a conversation in and of itself, you know.
Yeah, I think that kind of comes back down to leaving the instructions on what to do with the money as well, because yeah, giving people stuff while you're still here for them to to ask you for more, it's like, that one time where you wanted to, yeah, they used to always say, I forgot. I think I was watching like I Am Athlete, one of those podcasts, and they were talking about how, especially in the black community, their first thing is to buy their mother a home. So that's kind of paying the money backwards, in a sense, to like, instead of having that money going towards your kids, you have to go back a generation to make sure that they're
Wow.
good. So
I never thought of it like that.
yeah, that's always a and I think that's the point that I strive to get to, a point where my kids don't have to, take care of me. I want them to be taken care of. And we always hear about spoiled kids and things. I do think that there's a reasonable way to hand down money and responsibility at the same time, and I think that that should be the goal for a lot of people, is how do I leave my next of kin with the most amount of money and the most amount of responsibility moving forward, so to make sure that this wealth can travel generations. But I mean, I think that starts with the mindset. So if you have that, and a lot of people are just now getting to the point where they can kind of understand that, because it's been such a struggle. Every time they get money, then they feel the responsibility to take care of their entire family. So we need to get to the point where we have so many people making it that we're pooling our money and, making so. And like I said, I'm not blaming black people for where we are right now, because we've started in very unique situations. We've had to learn what to do. We've had to learn our place in America first and foremost. And when people kind of compare us to other groups coming into America, they're coming in with narrative and a plan. So even if you're talking about Africans coming to America, they're coming with the idea of the potential that America has to offer from an outside perspective. Growing up in America, that's something that is kind of shielded from us, just due to, I would say, society's low expectations of what black people can actually do. So the less that we think that we have, the less that we think we can do, the less that we actually strive to do. So I think with my generation, the next generation coming up, we are seeing more of the opportunities that are allotted to us. We've been able to see different people try and different people fail. We've seen different people succeed. And so now we're getting more of a sample size in order to understand what works. So it's still very slow. Like, I mean, how many years out of slavery are we, for real? I don't even know off the top of my head, but it's still just so small into the overall age of America in general. So we have to take that into consideration when we're looking at our advancements, and understand that, there is compound interest, and we're still at the very beginning of us actually starting to acquire wealth, and having things compound, and us passing on the information that we need in order to grow for the next generation.
So you said a mouthful. One of the things that Vince Staples mentions in the same conversation he's having with Kevin, he kind of says the same thing that you said in terms of not blaming black folks. What he does say though is that he believes that we as a group need a mindset overhaul. And so I do believe that there's enough resources available. This platform that we're creating, and then you've got a bevy of others. Earn Your Leisure. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I, a big fan. I'm a big fan of the work that Master P is doing. So there are people who are out there providing the information to help bring about that mindset shift. However, people have to do their part to gravitate to it. So I agree with you. I'm not blaming us as such, but when you made that really salient point about how in the black world it's often about one generation reaching back to be a blessing to the one before them as opposed to the one that comes after. Dr. George Frazier, who wrote the amazing book Success Runs in Our Race, which I encourage everybody to get and read, and he's been such an amazing part of seeking to lift us up. He made a really heavy statement. He said that his generation, he's a part of the boomer generation. He said that his generation was the first in Black America whose children would do worse than them. And part of the reason why you and I are having this conversation today is to stop the bleeding. Because, of course, things have not shifted from the boomers. The children that my generation have produced, if we're not careful, we'll be saying the same thing that George said. He works tirelessly to try to reverse that and change that. But this whole idea that you mentioned, where we got to reach back to the boomers and give them a house, when in fact the boomers should have been doing more just by being more thoughtful about how they manage their funds. So again, I think as we move into these conversations more deeply, and what Kevin said about his mother was really powerful. He said it in passing, but I wonder if we can be better stewards, which is something you were talking about. And as a young man, I'm sure that you've had the opportunity to spend every other night at a restaurant, but it was a decision that you made that I don't want to see my resources move like that. And you said something really good, really key. By the time you've done, by the time you've eaten out 2, 3, 4, 7, 12, 15 times in a month, you could have taken that and put it in some kind of investment vehicle, in an insurance policy, something that's going to compound positively.
I'm telling you, man, what's happening right now with and it's not because they have the DoorDash now, so you don't even have to leave your house. They got DoorDash, Uber Eats. I even use Instacart now a little bit here and there. So I mean,
Sure.
it's still to get groceries, but that's just, well, I think we've mentioned it before, gamifying people's finances. They don't look at the money as actual money. They just looking at it as points, like, oh, I got enough, and they're not thinking about where it's coming from. They like, oh, as long as it don't get declined, then I have enough money to buy it. And that's not the case at all, because they're ignoring the debt. They're ignoring the interest payment that comes when it's on a credit card. Like, and I encourage so many people to just do a simple budget, and that's really the biggest, I think, issue in our community. Nobody actually wants to take a look at their finances, because a lot of people are so afraid and concerned to see where they're really at. I mean, I remember I had to go through that once I was in different apartments paying for things. I used to have, when I was staying in like off campus housing, I was doing delivery driving and I was bartending part time. So I had two jobs and I was barely able to afford my apartment at that time. So that was kind of one of my early introductions to just realizing where all of my money, and I'm like, once I had to look at my credit card statements and make sure, like, because I had to actually calculate that I was going to have enough money to pay my rent for the month and to make sure that I had enough money to get back and forth to gas, then that's when I was like, oh, I can't afford to spend $5 for lunch every day and then have another, buy groceries on top of that, and then still maybe spend $30 going out to eat with friends at another thing. Like that's, and if you're not, you have to have courage in order to look at your spending. I'm telling you. So that's a lot of people's first step. If you haven't done it yet, you have to look at every expense that you send out. It all matters. If you're not debt free, all of that money I always say there's a better place for your money to sit than in your bank account. Like I used to just love to stack my money, just not spend it, and then just like to have look at it in my bank account. But I still had other debts to pay off, so it's like it's better off going towards that debt and not having to pay interest on that money later, as opposed to just having a lot of money in your checking account just so it can look cool. But put that money where it needs to go, and that's like a lot of people don't like the idea of a credit score, but that's actually the to me that's like the guide. That's the guide to financial freedom. It gives you everything. It gives you all the steps that you have to fulfill in order to be financially stable. So you need to pay things on time. You can and don't pay things on time, people. Do not be accustomed to getting late fees. Please don't. That's a killer. Don't overdraft from your account because you got something in savings. All of those small things add up, and you're spending an extra thousands of dollars extra on fees and just things that you don't need to be spending on. And it comes down to the pennies. Like every penny counts. And if you don't think so, I'm telling you, just look at where your money is going right now. That's really what got me off of fast food. Like, I'm like, I look at fast food as an extreme luxury. I can barely, I'm like, yeah, nah. Unless I'm out somewhere and just like have to eat something, I don't have the luxury of having fast food, unfortunately.
Part of the reason why, and as you were talking, I realized why it's so much easier for people to get dragged off by runaway credit offerings. Back in the day, when people got things on credit, it was with Mr. Joe, who owned the convenience store up the street. And if you developed a reputation for not paying your bill with Mr. Joe, that number one, because Mr. Joe was probably one of the free resources to get the things that you needed in town. If you messed up your credibility with Mr. Joe, you weren't going to be able to get the other stuff that you might need in that store at some other time. So people were less prone to mess up their credibility back in the day because there were less options. But now that people have so many options, there's a certain level of callousness. I had a situation recently where I had a client who was taking the money that they should have been paying me and taking trips with it. So, and whether they were taking those trips, so one might argue that they may have been taking those trips using more credit, but at the end of the day, if you're going to have the level of success that you ultimately want to have, you have to prioritize and decide what's important. Because at some point, all of that while spending, it catches up. It catches up, and it usually catches up when a person is least prepared for it to do that.
It catches up when they ready to retire. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. No, hold on. It sounded weird in my headphones. That's why I asked. But yeah, I was actually watching a video on YouTube. It's a financial guy, and he has people come on, and I watched them with two separate times. Both of them, it's called Financial Audit, and he was talking to two different black women. One lady, she was from Houston, Texas, and she was a bottle girl. And I was like, man, I've heard this story so many times, not being from Houston, Texas, but just different women who are like in the service industry and who kind of get money quickly, or they might have like a month where they do amazing, and then they try and start another side business. And those types of situations, it almost makes them feel like if they were to get a job that was consistent hours, then they wouldn't be making as much money, because they're always focusing on that one good month that they had. Like, oh, that one month I made $10,000. So, if I go and do a 9 to 5 where I'm only gonna get 6,000, 5,000, whatever per month. But what they don't see is the consistency of that check, as opposed to you go from 10,000 back down to $3,000 a month, or whatever the situation is, or you lose some hours. And that girl, the girl who he was talking to, she was living kind of in such a delusional state that she kept running. People run their financial number. They budget in their head, so they do some type of budgeting. But if you're not writing it down, then you're always giving yourself your best month. You're looking at the time when you had, somebody sent you an extra $500 for helping them out with something, and like you're looking at your greatest month and then trying to apply that for every month of the year. And then you had one month where you had got $100 off of your rent or something, and so now you're like, okay, well, if that happens again, and you factor in all of these things that aren't guaranteed into your budget. That's why you have to write it down, because we'll allow ourselves to play tricks on ourselves. Like, we'll play the mind game and think that we're doing so much better financially than we actually are if we're not looking at the actual numbers. It all comes down to math. It's very simple. And
you got to make sure the math maths.
The math is never mathing for a lot of people. But there was the other lady. She was older. She had moved to Texas, and she had a well-paying job. She was in the military, and so she got a consistent. She retired from the military and had a decent paying job, and so she was getting a consistent check from her military retirement. But what she was spending so much, and she didn't even recognize how much debt she had incurred. And she's thinking that she's about to retire, and when the guy ran the numbers, it's like it's going to take you 1,000 something months to pay off all of this debt at your current rate.
Woo!
So she's never gonna retire. And so many people kind of forget about the retirement aspect of things, and it's like, do you ever want to stop working? Or You know, we have to, that's why you have to think about the next generation, and just like, cause you're probably not gonna fulfill everything that you want to do in life. So it's like you have to have that vision for the next generation. And that's you just have to, we have to think of the future. Delayed gratification. We can't have this instant gratification where we're just trying to use all of our money right now, and because you're never gonna be able to buy enough happiness. You can't do it. That's never gonna fulfill you. You can only you have to just take what God blesses you with, and you know, use what He's blessed you with to bless the next generation.
On that note, um, I'm really grateful that you put me on to this particular interview, and I wonder. Uh, I think we're gonna. I think we're gonna come back and do something again next week. But I wonder if our audience would benefit from going ahead and watching this interview in its entirety, and that'll kind of give them even more of an insight on what some of the other points that's going to come out that we're going to use based upon this video. And I think even the next time we probably get a chance to hear some music
Yeah.
from this multi talented artist that Kevin is interviewing. I think this was a good one, and you really hit some really important points. And like I always say, there's nothing like you reaching into your generation and making it clear that not everybody is just out there blowing in the wind. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. I know we didn't. We had a lot more plans to kind of go to more clips from this interview, but we were having some technical difficulties. So it was a great interview or podcast, whatever you want to refer to it as. We might pick up on some of. We had a couple of different timestamps that we had wanted to get to, but the conversation just kind of carried us away. So, which is not a problem for us. But I did ultimately. I will leave the description. I mean the link for this video in the description on YouTube. So if you do want to see it in its entirety, you can. What I did, what I wanted to do here with FLW was to actually play him some music from Vince Staples, who was being interviewed here. So we haven't played any music on this channel yet because of just copyright issues, but we've kind of found a way to do that while streaming on Twitch and other platforms, and then maybe later just upload the video. So we're experimenting with a lot of different formats right now. As you can see, we don't have the little StreamYard logo at the top anymore, so that's a bit of an upgrade. I did kind of throw this together last minute. I just got a new laptop that I was trying to set up correctly, so it was I think it turned out to be a great episode. We didn't hit everything. We didn't hit everything that we wanted to, but for sure we'll be back. Next time maybe we will get to do the music, and what I wanted to do with the music is just kind of show that there, just start to kind of understand that the music is the first part to some of these artists' bigger plans, and just so we can start to maybe take the, because I also do want to show you he had one of his songs go viral a long time for a white lady hearing the lyrics and crying because it was so vulgar, and I'm playing on like satellite radio. So I think that would be interesting to see, even though, but it wasn't necessarily just vulgar about killing, but it's just some of the language he was using and some of the topics he was discussing. But it's commonplace in black communities to speak about some of these subjects. So I don't want to ramble. So thank you, Frank, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. This was a great episode. I'll have it uploaded pretty soon after this. I know I gotta edit some things out, but anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I just wanted to say that my hope is that those other clips we'll just get into it the next time, and that was the reason why I wanted to encourage folks to go ahead and watch the video in its entirety. And I think you'll enjoy it, and it'll also provide even more of a context for some of the things that we're gonna talk about in the next episode. So thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you the next time.
All right. Yeah, I think this will probably turn into another series situation. We haven't came up with a name for this one yet. Last series was consistency. So I think maybe this one's geared a little bit more towards finances. So we'll discuss that off camera. We'll get that all solved. But thank you everyone who's tuned in so far. If you're watching this later, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us out. And we will see you guys next time.